Right, hopefully if you're with us today, it's because you want to see finishing instructions for Mr Velleti Gets Ready for Christmas. And we are just doing the 3 ornaments today that comes with, so these 3 here. So I'm just going to do a quick run through of all the supplies you need. So I've got my 3 stitch designs here, and I've just trimmed them down and give them a really good iron. And then I've got what's called on Chantel 141 the Polar Pack. So these were originally designed to go with the Polar Plunge series. I think that Hands On Design did. And they come with 6 of these boards. And then you also get a template for your stitching in there as well. You only need 3 of those, but they are the perfect size. You also need some chalk paint. So for these ones, I'm using Artiste in baby pink, but you can use any brand chalk paint you want. I've chosen the baby pink because it goes with the scrapbook paper that I've picked, which is this one here, and that is, I'll tell you what that is, let's see. That's from Simple Stories, and it's called Snow Pine Lodge, and it had lots and lots and lots of different papers, and that's the one I've chosen for my ornaments. So you can choose the same for all 3, you can pick different ones, whatever you want to do is absolutely fine, but you can see that goes really nicely with my baby pink chalk paint. And I've got some little foam daubing brushes for my paint. You also need, this is like, I think a European version of Decopatch to adhere your paper down to your forms. I've got some more foam brushes just for that glue, so I don't wreck my other ones. I've got some really stiff card. It's super thin as well. I've got some batting. I like to use 100% cotton, but it's just leftover from what I have from quilting. I've got a glue gun as well, and obviously lots and lots of glue sticks, because I do seem to run through them at an amazing rate. And then last but not least, we've got the really fun bits. So I've got some little trees, I've got some peppermints, I've got some little Christmas lights, and then lots and lots of ribbon. I've just grabbed a selection that were in the right colours. I've got some pom-pom trim as well. And obviously you can choose whatever you like. I get these on Etsy from a place called Plum Boutique that's here in the UK. But obviously you can use anything that's close to you. Right, let's get started. Okay, so we've got our first of the 3 forms, and I'm just going to use my chalk paint. That looks nice. Just got a bit of extra cardboard, so I always, because I have so many boxes around my house all the time, just protect my table with some cardboard. Put that on my dauber. Right, let's go. I think that's quite thin actually. I might have to do 2 coats with that just because it's such a light colour. It's pretty though. be a bit more generous. There we go. Now I've thought about this and I've decided I don't think I'm going to do the edges. I quite like the colour they are. Apologise if you can hear the rain on the roof. It's quite rainy today, but that's what you get in the UK in autumn. Right, I think once that's dry, I'm going to give that another coat just because it's so pale. It's a really pretty colour. I think that'll just give it a bit more oomph. So that's one. Now, I'm going to go ahead and paint all three of these. And then leave them a really long time just to dry, because you don't want to take any chances. You don't want to get any paint on your stitching. I'm probably going to take a little while today because it's so humid and wet. That into all the crooks and crannies. Right, once you're happy with all three, just leave them to dry. You can do a second coat if you want. Right, so paint's all dried now. I did my third form in the Caribbean blue from the same paint range. And it's on to the next step, which is going to be decoupaging paper onto the front of the forms. So I've got my paper that I showed you earlier, Snow Pine Lodge from Simple Stories. These papers are reversible, so you've got lots of choice. Now, I want the entire front of my form to be the paper, so I'm just going to trace that on. I'm just going to line it up with the edge so that I don't have to cut as much. And then trace around, use a really sharp pencil. And don't forget to do your 3 little holes at the top. All the way around, make sure you get those exactly. There we go. So I'm just going to cut that out with some paper scissors. So I'm using the opposite side to this one. This is the back of my paper. It's a nice pattern, but not the one I chose. All right, let's check that that's an okay fit. Yep, not bad. Now what I do for the holes, you could use a hole punch and punch those out. I'm just going to use my pencil to make a very small hole in the middle. Actually, I think I'm going to use these scissors because they're a bit sharper. Just a tiny, tiny hole in the middle of each of these 3 holes. So this is going to be the holes for your hanging hook or string if you want, and then any decorations you want to put on it. So now I've got those through. Now what I'm going to do, put that on top of my form. All right, and use a really sharp pencil and go back in through those holes and just push it all the way down and twist it round so you get the shape you're after. And that'll sit really nicely inside, just like that. And you can take that out and you could cut away the excess paper that's on there if you want, but you don't have to bother. Right, so let's get rid of all that. We've got our deco patch. I'm using Decol adhesive paper because that's what's available in my area. Now I'm going to use our brush so we don't ruin our other ones. I've just got a foam brush. We're going to pop that on. It's really sticky. Just get that everywhere, all over. And just make sure you get around the edges really well. So that it seals down really nicely. And this is why I use cardboard underneath my working area, because it's just very easy to make a mess. All right, once you're happy, you've got that nicely covered, pop your paper on. And just make sure you nicely seal down all the edges. And just press that down really firmly. And that should adhere to your form. Now, I think what I'm going to do to protect my paper is just go over it with the Deco Patch. And that's going to dry clear and give it a protective coat as well. Right, that's all covered now. Now you want to let that dry really, really well. So I would probably give that a good 24 hours at least to dry, and then we'll come back and finish. Okay, so once that Deco Patch has had plenty of time to dry, your ornament will be nice and hard. And I'm just going to sand around the edges to make sure they look neat and that there's not any overhang of paper. And when you're happy with that, you should have a nice smooth finish. And then we need to move on to the next bit. So we're going to start assembling the ornament. When you purchase these forms, it comes with a template to use for the interior bit. So that's what I've used. And what I've done, you can see my cross stitch there. So I've gone ahead and used the template to cut out a piece of thin board and a piece of batting or wadding or whatever you call it in the exact same shape. So put your batting on top like that. And then you just want to center your cross stitch onto that template shape as best you can, and just have a feel around to make sure the edges all look even through the fabric. Might come up just a tiny bit. If you want to, you can stick that wadding batting down. Now, the way I then attach that is to lace the back. You can glue it if you want to. I just prefer the way lacing looks. I think it makes it nice and neat. So turn that over. And you can hold that up in the light if you want, just to make sure that looks even all around. Yeah, good. Like that. Now, to lace, you just need some thread and a needle. I always double my thread over and give myself a little loop at the tail. And then I start in the middle, and I'm going to do the straight sides first. Tell you what, I'm just going to straighten up that batting a bit. So in the middle of the straight sides, I'm going to pull over. And then get my fabric. And because I've got that loop, I can just thread my needle through the loop and pull it tight. And then come across and catch the fabric again. And then pull across. And what I'm going to do is go from the middle to the top to start with. And I'm going to use one bit of string thread for that. I said you can glue this if you want to. And I have done that in the past, but I do just prefer, I think with the threading it just pulls a little bit tighter. I think the worry with glue always that it will come undone as well. And then when I'm happy I've got to the top of my sides, I'm just going to work my way back down, catching that fabric and then coming to the other side. And then when I get to my final bit, just do a couple rounds of pulling your thread and needle through the fabric. Perfect. Now, I'm just going to trim the tail. And then I'm going to thread my needle again and do from the middle to the bottom. Now I always use Gutermann cotton thread, but but you can use whatever you like. It's just what I have on hand. I use it for sewing and I use it for quilting. And then, yeah, I'm going to do the same going from the middle to the bottom. And this is the time-consuming bit, but it's worth it to do it right. Just make sure you're pulling that really tight when you come across so that it is nice and snug. Right, so I've done from the middle to the bottom, and I'm just gonna catch my threads. There we go. So you've done that half, and that should hopefully be fairly centered. If it's not centered, the nice thing with the stitching is you can just move it along a little bit, make it look a bit neater. Right, so we've done that, and now we're going to do the top to the bottom. And that's going to be a little bit trickier because we've obviously got the curve here, and it means we're going to have to fold some of the fabric in as well. But that's all right. So again, thread your needle. Make sure you get plenty of thread on there. And then we're just turning it the other way, and we're doing the exact same thing, starting with the middle. Middle of the bottom to the middle of the top. Just fold that over. And then I'm going to come to the right. Now, as you get to the side, you're going to have to start tucking in your fabric. That's when you need to be a bit of an octopus. Just pull that nice and snug as you go along and catch those corners and really pull tight. Right, so we're at the end of our thread, so just tie that off. Now, don't worry, nobody's going to see this. If you think, oh, it's not very neat, it doesn't need to be. And then we're going to do the exact same on this side. So So that's the time intensive bit, but once you've done that bit right, it's really worth it, and it will make the rest of it a lot easier. Just keep lacing, so make sure you're catching all the little folds in the fabric as you come around those curves so that they're nice and snug. And you don't have any little funny angles sticking out when you turn it over. Lovely, that should be done. Yep, so hopefully when we turn it over, that should be nicely central. If it's not, just give it a bit of a wiggle. You can do that because you haven't glued it down. There we go. And then that will show you a little bit what we're expecting it to look like. But obviously we need to add a bit of trim to make it nice. Right, now, next bit, I'm going to put some pom-pom trim around the edge of my cross stitch design. I'm going to use hot glue for this. You can use craft glue. You could stitch it if you want to, but I'm far too lazy to do that. So I've got blue pom-pom trim. Now this was a much brighter blue and it didn't really match my little Yeti's face. So I just soaked it in some water to take some of the dye out and it looks much better now. So I'm going to start and I'm going to go around from the bottom middle. Just work my way around with hot glue. And just use really tiny beads. You don't need a lot. Apologies, I just had to get another glue stick. I seem to go through them at a rather astonishing rate. Now just doing little tiny dots, work your way around the edge. And you don't want the trim to show from the front, so just butt it right up to the edge, just so your little polka dots, pom-poms are hanging out. And when you get to the corner, pop a little bit on the corner and work your way around. Now, I absolutely love a hot glue gun. I've had a love affair with the hot glue gun since I was about 8 years old and had to make a wigwam out of brown paper bags and twigs. They're just so convenient. And just carry on round. Try not to remove your own fingerprints. And then just follow around the arch at the top. And again, this is a time when it would be handy to have a few extra hands. If you need to, use a clothes peg or clothespin just to hold down the bits you've already done. But I find with the hot glue it dries so fast that it's not a problem. Right, we're about halfway done. Now at the end of this, you're going to have to clean up all those strands of hot glue. If you're anything like me, make such a mess. And yeah, just keep checking as you go around that your trim's not sticking out beyond your cross stitch. Looking good, and then we're just coming around to that last bit. Now, just gonna trim my trim. Get rid of that. And then I like to just pull it down so that you don't get any overlap. Just glue that. Wait for that to dry. And you should see when you turn it over that we've got a nice trim all around our cross stitch. I'm just going to pull that down a little bit. There we go. All right, I'm happy with that. Now, so the next bit, I like to go ahead and try and put my ribbons in my holes before I attach my cross stitch, just to give me a little bit more room to work with. So I'm going to do that now. So I've chosen this ribbon. So we've got 3 holes. I'm going to use the top holes for my hanging ribbon and the bottom 2 holes for my decorative ribbon. So the ribbon I've chosen is sparkly white velvet, and it's just super pretty. I got that from Plum Boutique on Etsy. So I'm just going to thread my decorative one through the 2 bottom holes, going from the top to the bottom and then the bottom to the top. There we go. And then just make sure that's pretty even on both sides. There we go. And I do it that way so that the interior of the ribbon is that way. Now, to make a bow, you can make a bow however you like to make a bow. I'll show you how I do it. So, make my first loop and make sure I've got the right side of my ribbon outward. And then go round the loop and make sure in this case that the wrong side of your ribbon goes round. And then when you pull your second loop through, the correct side of your ribbon should be on there and facing in the right way. Right, so just do that and then twist it. Make sure you've got your pretty side facing upward, and then I just make my loops even. Now I'm going to trim that up and make that look better later, but I just wanted to get those in the holes before I attach my stitching. So, back to the stitching. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put that ribbon in as well. So that's the one I've used in for my hanging ribbon. And again, just thread that through the top hole. If you need to, use something sharp to poke it through, which is what I'm going to do. And then even up your ribbon. And then just make a tie. And pull that through nice and tight. There we go, and that's your hanging ribbon. So, to attach our cross stitch onto our board now, I'm going to use hot glue. Again, I said you can use whatever you like. You can use craft glue, whatever you find works for you. And I'm going to put lots and lots of hot glue on there. Just get a good amount around the edges. And thankfully you won't see any of this from the front. There we go. That should be plenty. And then just put that in the middle of your decoration, making sure it's even all the way around. And press that down really firmly. Great, so that's on there. Now, still not quite happy with this bow, so we're going to sort that out. Just going to make sure they're definitely even. And then I'm going to cut my tails to be about the same length as the loops. There we go. Now I like to finish the ends of my ribbon, and I do that. I just use a match to burn them, melt the ends. We're going to see if these matches work. These are, I think, honestly, from the 1970s, Isle of Man bank. My husband found them in his dad's garage. There we go. And just melt the ends so that they don't fray. Right, nearly lost my fingertips there. Be more careful than I am. And then, once I've done that, I just like to put a dab of hot glue to keep my ribbon neat. So it doesn't go wandering off anywhere. There we go. Right, so that looks pretty good, but I think we can add something else just for the finishing touch. So remember when I showed you I got peppermints and little Christmas trees, so I'm just going to attach one of these little peppermints to the middle of our ribbon. Get rid of any hot glue you find. Right, so needle and thread again. And just go in at the bottom middle of your knot of your bow. And then these ones have little hooks on them, so that's really handy. And then just attach that, go through that a couple times, just so it stays really secure. Go. When you're happy with that, just tie that off. And there you have it. One Mr Velleti who's pretty much ready for Christmas. So I've done the others earlier, and I'm going to show you what I did with those ones. So the other one with the peppermints I did very similar as well. And then last but not least, on the Yeti with the Christmas tree, I've just attached a little tree there instead of the peppermint. And there we go, all done, ready for Christmas tree. Right, I hope you've enjoyed making those with me, or it's given you some ideas of how to finish yours. Enjoy being creative, and I'll see you next time.